Hello, welcome back to another video. This week I decided to work on value studies using one pigment for each study. I talk about tips for one color or monochromatic paintings and my plans for these specific paints moving forward. Let's get started. The supplies I used include Arches cold press watercolor paper, Faber-Castell Polychromos color pencils in black, phthalo blue, and light ultramarine, and a Derwent pencil extender, a plastic mixing palette, 2 flat brushes in sizes 20 and 10, 2 round brushes in sizes 12 and 8, grams phthalo blue red shade, Daniel Smith's French ultramarine, Schmincke masking fluid, and Pebeo Studio Gouache in permanent white. Let's meet the pigments I'll be using for these studies. The first, French ultramarine, is made from PB29. Daniel Smith's version of this color is transparent, granulating, and mildly staining. The second pigment is PB15:0, which Graham calls phthalo blue red shade. This version of phthalo blue is transparent, non-granulating, and highly staining. These characteristics might not sound important right now, but they'll play an integral part to each painting and my experience with these pigments. I started with the French ultramarine study, then went into the phthalo blue study. If you want an in-depth look at my process, check out other videos in my Draw With Me playlist. The first tip I have for one-color paintings is to pick a color with a wide range of values. In other words, a color that can go from very dark to very light. In watercolor, all pigments can be lightened by diluting them with water, but some colors will have a wider value range than others. For example, yellow isn't capable of going nearly as dark as blue in its mass tone. Pieces made with yellow will be restricted to the lighter end of the value spectrum. This can yield beautiful results, but will be difficult for beginners to paint, since the differences between shadow and light are much more subtle. I recommend a darker color like blue or a deep purple or green for your one-color painting if you're just getting started. I chose blue because of the wider value range, and also to test the new tube of Graham paint I just got. My second tip for monochromatic studies is to pick reference photos with high contrast. Like the first tip, this will make it easier to create a study that gives the illusion of depth. A photo with bright whites and deep darks will let you go from the white of the paper to the mass tone of the pigment you chose, and leave you plenty of room to play with the in-between stages. As a bonus, these high contrast paintings tend to photograph better. If you're planning an original illustration, the same suggestions apply. Just be sure to keep your light source in mind, and make sure your shadows are deep enough. Tip number 3. Work with each pigment's strengths and know its weaknesses. From my lifting test and past experiences, I know Daniel Smith's French ultramarine lifts easily, which makes it easy to soften dried edges. I use this to smooth out the planes of the face and get soft blends on the shadow side of her face. However, this property also means it can be harder to layer glazes to achieve deeper values. I tried to limit the amount of layers I used overall and reserved my deepest darks for the final layer. If I laid the darks down too soon, the ensuing washes had a high likelihood of accidentally lightening them by lifting the dried color. In contrast, I knew from my tests that Graham's phthalo blue was highly staining. Seriously, this stuff is nearly impossible to scrub off plastic or fingers once dry. I wasn't afraid to go in with the darks right away, since I knew these layers wouldn't be going anywhere. I used many more layers, partially because of this, but also because it was difficult to achieve smooth blends. Colors that granulate, like French ultramarine, help mask uneven washes, much like a grainy filter will smooth out small imperfections on a photo. Without this texture, I could see exactly what went wrong and where, and since this paint was staining, couldn't erase it. Instead, I had to layer more washes on top to even out values and create the illusion of form. This study ended up taking longer than the other, but it also gave me a wider range of values and more control overall. My fourth tip when you're painting is to work from big to small. This tip applies to any painting, not just one color studies. Focus on your big shapes and overall forms first. It's tempting to zoom straight into those tiny details, but what creates the illusion of 3D form are the big shadow and light shapes, not these final touches. For both of these studies, I don't get into details like brow hairs or flecks in the irises until the end. Make sure you step back and take a look at your painting even when you do get to this part to see if you've missed something. If you find yourself getting caught up in the details too soon, try squinting or taking the photo into an editing software and blurring it. The details fall away when you do this, and the only thing you can see are the overall areas of light and dark. Working this way will make the study feel more cohesive. Instead of a collection of facial features and hair or parts of objects, your subjects will feel like a whole being. My final tip is to simplify details if they aren't in the focal area. This applied to the second study. I got carried away and started drawing out individual hair strands. Instead of making the hair feel real, this just flattened it and made it look busy. I fixed this by focusing on bigger shadow shapes, which turned this area from a mess of lines into readable locks with volume and shape. This meant I was painting over and essentially erasing details I had put in before, but the end result looks better this way. It's okay if you need to remove detail to get where you want to go, especially in areas outside of your focal point. The human eye can't focus on everything at once, so some things will always have lost or undefined edges in what we can see. Here are the final studies. In the beginning, I told you I chose blue because of its wide value range, but I also had another reason. I haven't touched the French Ultramarine in most of my studies I've done these last several months with the Daniel Smith Watercolor Essential set, and I wondered if switching it with a non-granulating warm blue would help. These studies help solidify the differences, and even though I liked aspects of the M. Graham blue, for now, French Ultramarine will be staying because of its relative warmth and how nice the granulation is in specific circumstances. Anyway, let me know if these tips were helpful, and as always, I hope you create something, whether it's with one color or many more, that brought you joy this week. I'll see you next Saturday with another video. Bye!